Welcome back to Series 2 of the Network Partner Take Charge to Make Change webinar series. We're super excited to have everybody back and to get you off on the second round of learning for how you can use advocacy to improve your sheltering operations. So here today, we're going to talk about making your budget work for you. We're going to talk a little bit about different types of funding and where those funding sources come from, and really how you can start to advocate to the appropriate folks to make your budget work for you in the ways that you need to. So I'm joined today by two of my fabulous colleagues. I'm going to ask Richard to introduce himself first.
Hello, everyone. My name is Richard Angelo. I am a legislative attorney with Best Friends. I've been with Best Friends since about 2015, working as a legislative attorney also ever since.
Kathleen?
I'm Kathleen Murphy, and I am with Best Friends as a legislative policy analyst.
Awesome. And of course, y'all have seen Kathleen and me already. So I'm Kelsey Gilmore-Futerall. I am also a legislative attorney here at Best Friends. And so we'll just get right into the really good parts of this. So sometimes we know a budget for a shelter doesn't have everything that it needs in it. So how do we know what's in the budget, and how do we know what we might need in the budget?
I can start off with this one. So when talking about municipal budgets, that process usually is going to, it's usually the same year in, year out, regardless of who your mayor is. Their style may be different, but so if you're a municipal budget, you should be able to find your previous operating budgets online. Now it's going to be called a budget book, and it's very thick and very boring with lots of numbers in it, but it usually will have a summary, and it will have breakdowns of what is in that operating budget. And then typically it will also have a breakdown of staff numbers, full-time, part-time, and that type of thing. And so from there, that kind of gives you the basis of, you can see operating styles, but it's not going to necessarily tell you earmarks for programs. I think when you're trying to get that information, you're going to have to go directly to the shelter and ask for it, and ask them how they are doing those breakdowns. Or you could also do an open records request for some of their more internal documents. But the basic information is going to be in that budget book, and it should be online.
So that's a really great thing to point out, Kathleen, that we've got a couple different styles of shelters that are on these series, right? So you've described very well what a municipal shelter might look like. Rich, can you talk a little bit about how a shelter that might be a nonprofit with a municipal contract might know what is in their budget, or what to look for in their budget?
In the municipal budget?
Or in if it's a nonprofit with that municipal contract. So either of those things. I think we're going to end up talking about it all today.
Yep. Well, one of the big things with a nonprofit is going to be making sure that you're covering your costs as you're going through. So knowing approximately how many animals are coming through, how many animals may be being brought by the municipality as you come through. Those are very, very important things to make sure you know exactly what, or very, very close to what those costs are going to be, so that you're not running yourself into the ground. What are the expectation costs and so forth as you're running through that fiscal year? And does it make sense to enter into that contract with the municipality if you cannot possibly make it work based upon the expectations that the municipality might have?
That's really helpful to understand what actual costs you have, and then to make sure they match up or are covered by whatever funding you have. So Kathleen, can you share a basic overview, really from an upper level view of the budget process? And I think it can also be applied to contracts. So whether you get your funding directly from a municipality as part of that government agency, or whether you're a nonprofit with a contract, what's that overview of the process look like for that?
Sure. So typically the budget is going to come out, most fiscal years for local governments are the same, right? You're going to be looking at the budget. It's going to be announced and put out typically in May, and the city council is going to be voting on it typically in June. Now, trust me, it does not happen overnight that this budget is written up or determined. Typically your administrator, if that's a city manager or a city administrator, or if you're a mayor run type of form of local government, they're going to start those budget hearings typically in the fall. And in the fall is when they're going to have those conversations with department heads, reviewing contracts, saying, was this the right contract? Do we need it again? Is it too small or too big? And all of that kind of takes place from, I would say, September, October, and up until May, when your city leaders are going to put it out. Typically you hear a lot about, like, you know how you have the president say the state of the union speech. Well, usually it's the state of the city or the state of metro, and that's when they will be introducing their budget priorities. And then that's when your marathon sprint really starts, if you need changes in that budget, because that's when it is turned over to the legislative body to amend, subtract, add, shift things around. And that approval process is in the legislative hands. Now, I will warn you, most times, when it goes to the legislative body, they don't have the staff to start from scratch. So they're going to be really working off of what the executive or the administrative branch has given them. And oftentimes, if you write in and say, we need more money for our shelter, or we need more money for this program or that program, your elected officials are going to say, we agree with you, but we have to identify where that money is coming from. So be prepared to say, if we need $300,000 for the shelter for X, Y, and Z, try to find somewhere, help those legislative, your legislators and your elected officials find a place to take that from. It's not a comfortable situation. Nobody wants to do that, right? You don't want to be cutting it from schools or, or other public safety areas, but be prepared to have that pushback of identify the funding source. And so then that will be passed. And then that's it for the next year, really. So it passes usually by July 1, and those public hearings and those budget hearings start all over again in the fall.
That's really helpful. So it sounds like we're, as network partners are watching this, they should really be looking at the committee meetings or the council meetings or commission meetings coming up starting in September, and start to have their figures in front of them. Rich, can you talk a little bit about what a request for proposal is? An RFP is what we see them called a lot of times, and why that matters. And really kind of if we've got a nonprofit with the municipal contract, or who may be looking to bid on a municipal contract, what the RFP process is, or things that they need to make sure are included in their contracts.
Sure. Request for proposal, or RFP, is something used by both municipalities and counties in order to, it's a process that will allow them to gather bids from private individuals or other contractors to be able to cover some sort of municipal and or county service. So generally it's a long drawn out document and process that they put out on their website or through some other sort of public information, and provide a time frame for folks to apply and submit proposals to whoever put out the bid. And usually there's criteria that fit within there. And generally a lot of it is very, very boilerplate as far as insurance and other sorts of regulations. But they're also looking for what are the costs that can be out there. The municipality is looking for those costs that might be involved, and who's going to come in both low, and what services are going to be provided. It's a chance for nonprofits to be able to take over some services and or start services within their own areas, and in some cases it's actually changing the services that a municipality and or county may have once handled internally, and may now say sheltering be taken outside of it'll be a private public type of partnership in payment wise. So you got to be very, very careful and pay attention to obviously, what are the criteria as they're putting it in there? If the criteria are so far out there that, it's possible you may not even want to put in a proposal on those things. So don't get yourself in over your heads. Don't get way out of line based upon whatever your goals of your organization may be. But following through with the request for proposal process is one of those things that it's becoming more and more common for municipalities and counties to be able to put these things out there and look for private partnerships among sheltering individuals. So it's a long drawn out process, but it's not rocket science. It's more or less checking boxes and being able to make sure that you can afford to do what you're doing and that it's a good fit with that municipality and or county that you're dealing with.
Kelsey, let me add a little bit there. Through that RFP process is a way to advocate, because typically, before the RFP goes out, you may have the opportunity, or you want to try to have that opportunity to meet with who is putting out the RFP, meeting with the municipality or with the health department or with your purchasing or finance department, and say, this is what we as a community know our needs are. And that needs to be reflected in the request for proposal. So that can be built in. So if you, for example, if there's not a CCP community cat program in your area, and you want to see it in there, see it taking place, that could be something that's built into the RFP. And then whoever is bidding on the RFP is building that into their cost, into their things. And so that's how you can negotiate, you can advocate and try to negotiate and get those things in the RFP. And then on the back end, once those requests are turned in, you can also advocate after the RFP has gone out and during the selection process, saying, if you missed it on the first end, still advocate on the back end and say, it's really important for us to see this in the next contract, or this didn't really work in the last contract you did, so please don't do it again. So you still have, while it seems like a very formal paperwork in, paperwork out, it's still an opportunity to advocate to your government on what you'd like to see in that contract.
That's a great addition there, Kathleen, to be able to advocate for what is being provided by whichever organization is selected to provide it, including the one, that may be yours. In terms of the amount of money that is being used by a shelter, we are talking about the budget today. If your budget isn't meeting your needs, what's a good way for a shelter to get an idea of what's going on in similar communities? I know in the past we've helped look at, maybe a sister city or a similar community in that state to see what the population is, what the services are, maybe how many animals are coming through. Is that a good way to gauge whether you're being adequately funded?
I think so. I mean, every city is compared to their sister cities, whether not necessarily a formal sister city relationship or something like through the nonprofit, but every city has a sister city that they're constantly being compared to. And whether it's from transit dollars to health department dollars to animal shelter dollars, that's the best way to do it. You can see if your staffing levels are adequate that way, compare and see what other people do, other cities do, but also see if maybe you are getting more animals in and less animals out, or vice versa, and see why those numbers are not similar. If there's a difference there, try to look for those answers, because that could be addressed through the next cycle of funding and program priorities.
Rich, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'm going to take it in a little bit of a different direction, and just simply because it doesn't need to be a similar type municipality if they're not providing the same service in some ways, shape, or form as well. So keep that in mind also. You need to be taking a look at, we've been banging the drum for years and years and years here at Best Friends about data, what's coming in, what's going out, and what services are you providing. Other things to take into account sometimes with some of these budgeting processes is union contracts, because a lot of times you are bound by some of those things based upon the municipality, and you have to incur or have to set aside so much of your budget in one place for X amount of staffing. And in other places, if you're looking at, say, a municipal with a private, you may not be running into that same issue as far as having those set costs ahead of time. Not to mention, you may not be having the same amount of animals coming in. You may not be able to do, like Kathleen mentioned, the CCP earlier. If you can't do it in that particular area, you may not be able to do apples and oranges, but you can certainly get there, right? You can certainly take a look at it and say, okay, maybe we drop this one out and we apply this different type of programming in a certain area. So it's a lot of different puzzle pieces to be able to compare it, but it's a pretty easy thing to be able to do.
So, Rich, in your experience, what's a good way for a shelter to continue to kind of stay in the front of the minds of the people who hold the purse strings? How can they continue to let those folks know throughout the year how the money is being spent and whether it's an adequate amount of money? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think probably 99% of the people who are going to be watching this recording are going to say they don't have enough money, because there's never enough money, right? So being able to cover your costs and showing the success of certain programming, tracking what you're doing in different areas, not to mention in certain, like Kathleen had mentioned, the advocating, that is the time you want to advocate when things are working. When things are working, don't forget to reach out to your local officials and be able to say, if it's whether it's the local municipal shelter reporting to your county commission every once in a while about what's going good, or your city council what's going good. If you're a local with nonprofit with a contract, you want to be getting in touch with them over and over and over and saying, hey, look at how great we're doing with our community cap programming in this area, and certainly being able to target it to certain people in the districts. Go to the people who are in their districts. If you're working, let them know about adoption events that you may be having in little areas across, because I will tell you, a local official would love showing up there and seeing all the great and getting some good public relations as well. So I think that is the biggest thing, is being able to reach out and let everyone know what you're doing. Not to mention, they don't hear when things are going good. We say that a lot amongst us, so letting them know when something is going good is going to allow you to be able to, it's a different way of telling them, instead of beating them over the head with a stick saying, we need more money, we need more money. The best way to show them we need more money is to show how something's working, and how to say, we want to be able to do this next. They're going to be more inclined to grant those types of proposals when they can see positive results from both the community and the department.
I want to echo and emphasize what Rich just said, is when you are doing something well, make sure to find a way to tell and show them, because we all know when something goes bad, the community will take care of that for us a lot of times, right? They will let your elected officials know when something is not going well at the shelter. So making sure that you are kind of show and telling and just invite them to your events, invite them to do a shelter tour on a regular basis. Really doing those kind of bragging on yourself is just as important, because again, it's hands-on and it gives them a different understanding of your needs. And so I think that is, what Rich said. I just really wanted to emphasize it's so important. And we so often, y'all are busy with the day in and day out of the shelter, and that does take time to dedicate and schedule those meetings and ways to show off. But it is vital. It is just as vital as a budget presentation or any other hearing you would go to.
Those are great tips. So we are at time. So I want to just kind of recap that folks should be prepared for budgets coming up September, October of this year. So get your numbers in order and be prepared to advocate for what else needs to be in the budget. Keep an eye on your contracts, or for RFPs. If you don't currently have a contract but are looking for one, keep an eye out and maybe reach out to who posts RFPs when it's time for them to come about. and keep sharing the great news that you're doing and the great work that you're doing with the elected officials who hold your purse strings. So with that, we hope you enjoy the rest of the sessions in this particular series. Thank you, Rich. Thank you, Kathleen.
Thanks.
All right, we'll see everybody next time.